is this video I prepared that I wanted to watch, because one thing you don't know is that I am obsessed with CRT. And this is an hour video, so of course I'm not gonna watch the whole thing. We'll watch a little bit and provide a little commentary. But I always love these videos that do like, oh my gosh, this one has 666,000 views. And the title of this one really caught my attention. And it says, why CRT TVs are important for retro gaming. Let's give him a like and let's go. Let's check it out.
I spent the last year or so of my life messing around with these old box TVs. You know, CRT televisions. I've gone through...
That's a Triniton. Man, I'd recognize a Sony Triniton from a mile. Wouldn't you?
many different TVs and played a bunch of consoles on them. It's really given me an appreciation for how CRTs draw a game's image.
Appreciate.
So much so that I now believe CRTs are...
Okay, so contra for a lot of you, I think Americans, but for me, I remember this, but with the robot, and it was called Probotector, because in Europe they censored it, since they thought, no, too violent for kids, and that is probably the only instance in which censorship actually improved the game, because Probotector looked sick.
are necessary for retro games. Well, when it comes to using the original hardware, and for certain types of games.
So would you think, do you agree guys, do you think CRTs are necessary for retro gaming? What do you think? I'll wait for your answer.
Well, when it comes to using the original hardware, and for certain types of games.
Okay, so he did kind of qualify his statement, right? Because he said CRTs, he believes, are necessary for retro gaming when it comes to certain games, and if you're using original hardware. Of course, if you're emulating, you're emulating. I'll tell you this, it's not that I disagree, like I always connect my original system to CRTs, always, but that's probably because I'm looking for a specific nostalgia experience, and so that makes it more similar to what I used to do back in the day, and that's why I like it more. I don't think CRTs are required to enjoy retro gaming, but I do believe they would be optimal, particularly if you're looking for that retro game experience. But these days, if you use good retro game emulators, you can even insert scan lines. Of course, they're not always as good depending on the filter, but some can be pretty decent. So at the end of the day, I don't think they're necessary. CRT, I don't think they're necessary, but I do believe they're optimal. That's what I think.
More on that later. My CRT journey started circa 2022 when I got back into retro gaming. I wanted to play both NES
Zelda.
and SNES games, but was aware of the pain it is to get them looking good on a modern TV. Everybody was recommending CRTs, so I really wanted to see what all the hype was about. Even though I did actually have a CRT when I was a kid.
Me too.
But I don't remember having any opinions about it in regards to image quality. It was...
You know, that's an interesting statement to make. Yeah, because when HD monitors arrived, like the first plasma and the first LEDs, then I remember immediately saying, my gosh, look at the graphics, because HD games, 360, that kind of stuff, PlayStation 3. When it came to CRTs, did we ever say, wow, look at the image? It was just TV. It was like, that's TV, that's how it is. I guess. Maybe the size is something like, whoa, look how big that TV is. Maybe when the size was bigger, sure.
The TV, it did the job, and that's all you really needed as a kid.
Yeah.
Anyways, I started looking on Facebook Marketplace, but I didn't really find anything. Then one day, I was driving home, and I saw it.
It's kind of funny that he said he didn't find anything by looking through the Facebook market, and here there are like a million, and pretty some good deals as well. $50 for a CRT. Where? Palmdale, California. Always California.
Then one day, I was driving home, and I saw it. A tiny CRT with
like
a sign
mine
next to it that said free. It was a 13-inch Sanyo, model number DS13320, if you're wondering. And 13 inches is very small. We're talking something that
yeah, actually mine is a little bigger than that.
Would fit right on a desk.
Definitely.
Now, I still didn't have anything to plug into this TV, but I soon got an NES with a copy of Mario Bros. And I gotta say, when I first saw this game on the TV, I was quite disappointed. It just didn't look at all how I expected. I mean, I had seen video capture of retro games on CRTs with those cool scan...
I really wonder why. Maybe it was just the quality of the CRT screen that he found.
And lines across them. So that's what I expected, but this did not at all live up to that. It just seemed like a crappy version of the game.
What happened?
The clarity that I was used to seeing on stuff like emulators.
That must have like the phosphor completely destroyed.
I think it was the overall fuzziness that turned me off. And it had other issues like weird colors and having parts of the screen cut off.
Yeah.
So this really just wasn't the best introduction to CRTs for me.
Right.
And I wasn't feeling too optimistic about them. Soon after this, though, I found somebody giving away a 20-inch Panasonic.
Panasonic. Do you guys have Panasonic in the US as well? Because I know you have Philips, but you don't. It's not as common in Italy. Everybody had a freaking Philips or Casio. Panasonic, though, very, very common in Italy.
Model number PVC2060. And I have to give you these model numbers because it just bugs me when someone talks about a TV and doesn't give you the model number. Now, this TV was significantly bigger than the previous one.
Yeah, it looks nice.
Man, it looked way better.
For sure.
I could finally see the scan.
Yeah.
And Mario now actually looked like Mario.
You know what's interesting about scan lines? They actually complete the drawing, the picture, the sprite. Of course, these were developed with scan lines in mind. So whenever a developer was drawing the sprite, even if they didn't like finish completely the elbow or like, you know, they knew that the scan line would have completed that. And that's why sometimes when you play these games without the scan line filters, it looks like it's missing something. And it is. It's missing the scan lines. They were part of the picture.
There was just an
right?
overall improvement in image clarity. I was honestly thrilled to get this TV, and I spent quite a bit of time playing on it. Just about anything I threw at it looked
Mario
good.
World.
NES, SNES, PS2, PS1, I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
It felt like the key that unlocked these retro consoles for me.
For sure.
'Cause now I could play all of them without worrying about them looking crap. And overall, this is where it really clicked for me why CRTs are better for retro games. Now, I did get two TVs after this that were both improvements over the Panasonic. At this point, I knew CRTs were the real deal.
Right.
I just wanted a TV with more features. Given that my Panasonic didn't support stereo sound,
I think right there, yeah, sure. I mean, yes, if you new feature, if you want the stereo, absolutely. Because I was about to say, for me back in the day, whenever it was time to buy a new CRT, because we had a few in, like one for me, one for my mom, one for my dad. My dad had the massive one in the living room, of course, but sometimes he would let me play with that. So like if it was a Saturday night and we were having pizza, it's Italy, then my dad would be like, oh, come on, bring the Nintendo. So of course, do keep in mind that when my parents said Nintendo, it could have meant anything. Like in this context, it would be the NES, but in any other context, it could be a PlayStation 2, still Nintendo. Could have been a Sega Mega Drive, get the Nintendo. So it's always Nintendo, whatever. So it's fun because I would go get it and attach it to the massive TV, and now everything was amazing. Metroid is huge.
and didn't have higher quality inputs like S.
It does look different.
I first found a 20-inch Emerson EWF 2004A, which had stereo sound and also S-video, but no component. But then I found this gorgeous Sony KV24FS120, which has these insane speakers.
See, yeah, come on, you're giving me the numbers. You gotta say Triniton. You gotta say it. It's like when you summon it. If you're casting a summon spell, you have to say Triniton. That is amazing.
On the side. And also every input you could possibly want, including component. So
That is actually, I have to disagree with you there, mate. That's not, I need to get that picture. Guy. This is going to take, okay. So this, as a European, this is not every input or port that you could possibly want. You know what it's missing? If you're from Europe, you know it immediately. SCART. Everything had a SCART port in Europe, and that was the most common. In fact, my Amiga 500, it's connected through SCART onto the monitor, the 1080 monitor. 1080 is not, of course, the resolution. I mean, I don't think I need to specify that. It's just a model. Commodore 1080 monitor. But it's because it's a European monitor as well, so I could just do the SCART thing.
regardless, though, you don't need something crazy like this. Because every CRT
Yes, you
I've
do.
owned, apart from that Sanyo, has looked amazing when displaying retro games.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
in order to really understand why, we do need to look at the CRT technology a bit more and some of the technical aspects of it. So in this video, you're going to hear me use the term modern TV a lot. And just know that by modern TV, I'm talking about 16:9 flat screens that can be LCD, OLED, or whatever the hell term they're using now.
Right.
I mean, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's the technology that came after CRTs. And it's important to understand that CRTs are analog devices,
Yeah.
very different from our modern digital TVs. The reason they're analog is because they have one or more electron guns that shoot electrons to create an image. Well, it's a bit more complicated than this, but for the purpose...
Quite a bit more complicated than that. I actually had to watch a few videos, including the 8-bit guy and a few other tech guys, to really figure out how a CRT works. And I really like how 8-bit guy put it, because he was basically talking about the fact that, of course, it needs to have a vacuum. There has to be a vacuum. So he was showing how it's very similar to when you have like a light bulb, but then you put it to the side and you enlarge this part of the light bulb, and now you have the screen with the glass. And it was a really cool way to put it. It's insane technology, though. I don't know how they came up with it. Like, every time I see how things are made, the transistors, the stuff inside computers, I'm like, who came up with it? How did they do it?
Purposes of this video, that's really all we need to know. It's also key to understand that CRTs don't have pixels, and you can instead think of their image as being made of many horizontal lines. Because to create an image, a CRT draws each horizontal line from left to right. It starts at the top of the screen and works its way down to the bottom. This happens for each frame in a video on a CRT. So frame 1 has every line drawn from top to bottom. Then after that, frame 2 has every line drawn from top to bottom, and so on and so forth. Now you can see this animation doing it here, but this is a lot slower than it would happen in real life. I mean, it happens so fast that you don't see the lines being drawn one by one. You just see the entire frame of the image all at once. And amazingly, the slow-mo... Mind-blowing tech. Even the fact that, in fact, if you start, it's only one dot. You can block that. Like, I've seen videos that show that it's just one dot in the middle. Then you start moving it and it creates the line. And because it's so fast, it is insane. Guys managed to capture a CRT drawing each individual line of an image.
That's the real deal.
The image information gets filled in from left to right as each line gets drawn.
Is that Super Mario?
To perspective how fast this happens, they had to use a frame rate of around 380,000 frames per second just to be able to capture this. So yeah, I'm not lying, these TVs do actually draw horizontal lines in this way.
Look at that.
And because a CRT image consists of horizontal lines rather than pixels, their resolution is actually measured by the number of these lines they have.
Right.
And this number was standardized across different regions of the world. But here in North America, the standard was 525 horizontal lines. And it goes back to the 1940s. However, of these 525...
During the war, ladies and gentlemen.
5 lines, only about 480 of them were generally used to display content. And CRTs of this type that only use 480 of their 525 lines are called standard definition CRTs. These are the most common CRTs and are what was available for consumers to buy.
I mean, look at this. I love it. I think CRTs look gorgeous when they're turned off. Instead, like modern screens, they just look black. But CRTs have this hue and this little glossy because of the glass, of course. I love CRTs. I know that there is a nostalgia aspect to this. Even the one on the right, I think, is the oldest of all these systems, all these sets.
Now, even though these TVs use 480 of their lines for content, only half of them are drawn at once. So rather than seeing a full frame at once, you see what's called a field. And a field just consists of every other line of our image. So we have lines with image information and lines that are just blank. To illustrate this further, say we number the lines of our image.
Very cool. So he's going quite deep into it. Let me see. Interlaced video. Yeah, that's a bit much. Types of CRTs. Analog connections. Oh yeah, I like this one actually. Component and composite. S-video. Is he going to talk about the SCART? Or is he not going to talk about it? That's a pretty decent. I mean, that's a lot of work and research. 240p on modern TVs. Let's see why 240 looks better on CRT. Raw pixel. Yeah, that's the thing. Let's watch this one. I like this.
And here's where my argument comes into play. That I take issue with the raw pixel.
Yeah, look.
And think it degrades the quality of 240p games. I don't like how flat, blocky, and pixely everything is.
It's funny, I still like it. I like pixels. What can I say?
It just makes these games look dated when they really don't have to.
Yeah, look at that.
It's completely my opinion, so feel free to tell me why you think I'm wrong in the comments. Now, on a CRT, 240p games just look amazing.
Right.
I mean, this is how they're supposed to look. Just look at these side-by-side comparisons.
Holy moly, you wouldn't even recognize it. I mean, I wonder why the colors are so different, though. I wonder if... Is it the same image? That's insane. I'm going to have to test this.
Comparisons. Isn't it crazy? I mean, even if you think I'm nuts and prefer the raw pixel look, you can at the very least agree with me on how different the two look.
Sure.
So even though I prefer the CRT look, it's interesting to note that the raw pixel look is what these games are in actuality.
Yes, exactly. So that's the image, how they create it, and it's the image behind the screen. The screen acts as a filter.
Like when artists designed the pixel
Yeah.
art, they worked with individual pixels that were even squares.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it's what we're supposed to see. And this is where the
Yeah.
CRT comes in to transform this pixel art into something that's more appealing to the eye. It's kind of like the raw pixels are a plain
Mhm.
cake, and the CRT is there to add the frosting and
This is such a good representation here of the two styles. I find both pleasing. I mean, some of the pictures that he showed earlier on, indeed, they looked pretty bad, like the Grey Demon. But I have to say that this one here, I like both. Like this one, the one at the top, without the scanned lines, makes it look more an animated cartoon, while the one at the bottom makes it look more like a game, to me. Also because I grew up with these. So I imagine that's the reason.
And this frosting just does it for me. It's honestly a breath of fresh air if you're only used to looking at these games
Wow.
on a modern TV. The image is now much rounder and
Yeah, I recognize the one on the left. I do recognize. As you guys were saying, it is very zoomed in. Like this is supposed to be a much smaller image, 100%, and it would look better. But the one on the left is the one I recognize.
seems to have more depth even. Text in a lot of games is completely changed now too.
Hmm.
It's no longer blocky and becomes more rounded. I
Yeah.
guess it wasn't supposed to look so pixely. Also, look at these backgrounds. They're much more legit now. They get smoothed out just enough to make them more convincing and prevent them from looking pixelated. Chrono Trigger's backgrounds, for example, benefit from this and look beautiful. Colors blend very nicely now too, and diagonal or slanted lines don't appear to be made of tiny squares anymore.
Right.
I'll have to point to Chrono Trigger again and this art in the menu. I mean, it's clear that the artist wanted this to look like a panel in a manga, and a modern TV really doesn't convey this look as well as a CRT does.
Yeah.
Just because the lines here look so jagged, rather than how smooth they look on a CRT. And this translates to...
I absolutely agree. I think if I were to make a video, not like this one necessarily, but maybe just a video on this section. So a video where we discuss the differences between, we just focus on this, and rather than talking about all the rest, and just focus, hey, let's find images and look. I think what I would do different in this case, it's a fantastic video, by the way. He's done a great job. And plus, he sounds young to me, so I appreciate that he likes the kind of tech that I grew up with. Yeah, so what I would do different is that I would put first the image like much smaller, how it's supposed to be in the game size, and then maybe we can zoom in and look, because this is taking my entire screen, so of course it's gonna look like it's a mess, but it's too big.
other games too, and gives them a much more cartoony look. I see this the most in Super Mario Bros, but also in Super Mario World. Just look how
What a
cool
game.
Mario looks here. Also, in the case of 3D 240p games, as
Right.
in stuff on the PS1 and Nintendo 64, you'll find that they also largely
Yeah.
benefit from being displayed on a CRT,
Absolutely.
because 3D characters look less pixely and are better defined. So that PS1 or N64 jaggedness you
Man, I don't know why though, I still like it. Like even now that it's missing the CRT and I can see all of the jagged, I love it though. It looks good. This is probably why I'm such a maniac when it comes to Valheim, and I refuse to put any mod that will improve the graphics, like the textures. I want to see the pixels and the jagged lines. It's just, it is what it is, isn't it?
might be used to won't be as noticeable on a CRT. And also consider that
Ah.
despite the fact that these games are in 3D, they still use a lot of 2D pixel art for their menus and on-screen overlays.
Sure.
Also, these consoles are probably the ones that look most dated when played on an emulator. There's just something about the graphics that when played on a modern TV, they just look shitty. It's
This is also a little zoomed in because look, you can't even see the number, the speed, bottom right. I don't know if he did it to kind of convey an even stronger idea that it looks bad in his opinion. I don't think it looks bad. You know, believe it or not, I like that yellow car in the back. I don't know, maybe it's just me, I'm weird. I actually like it, I find it endearing. But I think the fact that it's zoomed in makes
almost
it
like
even
I'm
more...
playing a completely different game. But on a CRT, there's got to be some black voodoo magic going on. Like, these games have no right looking this good. We should also talk about scan lines, because even though they're a side effect of how 240p games are displayed on a CRT, they still help better define pixel art graphics. I mean, a lot of the CRT advantages I mentioned earlier are augmented by scan lines.
Right.
Stuff like removing jaggedness or rounding an image. If you're emulating,
Oh
simply adding a
my
filter that
gosh.
adds black horizontal lines over an image will also achieve this effect, which is interesting because that's not exactly how scan lines work on a CRT. But I'm so used to them at this point that it feels weird playing 240p games without them, and it should, considering how 240p works. Another thing I like about...
Very nice. Anyways, it's a nice essay. It's very long. I think I reacted enough, and I never reacted the entire video. I've already given him the like, of course, but I think I'm gonna call it a day with this video.